Hello there. Thank you for joining me for a brand new series on Telile Community Television, Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. Every week, I'm going to bring together 2 or 3 people who have one specific thing in common, so they can share their stories and experiences with each other, but also with you, the viewer, so you can see that what they go through day by day isn't all that different from what you experience day by day. To kick things off, I've asked 3 municipal councillors from Richmond County and the towns of Port Hawkesbury and Mulgrave to join me. Now, apart from geography, they each have one very specific thing connecting them. Each one of these municipal councillors was first elected and sworn in just a year ago, so they're celebrating their first year anniversary in office. In just a moment, you're going to hear from Melanie Sampson, who has just become Richmond County's new Deputy Warden and is celebrating her first year as the Municipal Councillor for Richmond's District 3. We'll also hear from Port Hawkesbury Councillor Jason Aucoin and from Mulgrave Councillor Krista Luddington, who, like Sampson, are all celebrating their 1-year anniversary. Let's begin the conversation with Melanie Sampson right now. So I wanted to start with you, Melanie, if I could, just making that transition from being a candidate and winning the election to actually taking office and getting to work after you were sworn in. So what was that process like for you?
So when you're new to municipal politics, right, everything is new. So the rules are new, but also the problems are new, and the processes and procedures and people are all new, right? So it was a world that I had never been exposed to before. So I like to learn. So that was helpful for sure. But it's quite a trek up that hill, and after 12 months, there's still things that I'm not sure about. And so still learning. I feel like, honestly, that's going to take a long time to get to know all the parts.
Jason Aucoin, what about you? What's been your experience in terms of going from successful candidate to actual working councillor?
Well, unlike Melanie, I was lucky enough to have some long-serving council members to help me guide through this process. So, the 2.5, 3 weeks I waited to actually get sworn in was a little anxious, and it felt like 2 or 3 months. But once sworn in, the councillors that have been here for a while and the mayor really took me under their wing and made it a very easy transition.
And Krista Luddington, your experience is very different from the other 2 folks we have here, because you were one of 4 Mulgrave Town councillors that were actually all acclaimed to your positions. There was still a contested race for mayor, Ron Chisholm winning that race, but you were acclaimed and you became a councillor just after the nominations closed. So can you give me a sense on what it was like going from that about month and a half before you were sworn in to actually hitting the ground running as a municipal councillor in Mulgrave?
Yeah, so it was a fantastic experience all the way around, but it certainly felt like a lifetime from the time that we found out that we were in to when we were actually sworn in. It's been a year of ups and downs. All great experiences, but so much learning. Like Melanie said, it's just been a roller coaster ride in terms of all of the moving parts. There's so many rules and so many new things that I've never been exposed to prior to this experience. So it's been wonderful. And I feel like it's the tip of the iceberg, but it's been good.
Hey, let me ask you, actually, Krista, just picking up on that point about all these new things that you were exposed to, what do you feel were some of the most surprising things for you in starting off your first year on council? What were some of the things that stood out for you?
I would say I was somewhat familiar with our bylaws, but it's been a year of really digging in and seeing what policies and bylaws that are already at play, and ensuring that we are following those to the best of our ability. And so I think that would be the biggest kind of learning curve for myself, among many, many other things. But yeah, just really digging in and making sure that I have a really good understanding of the structure that's behind our town council.
Right. Jason Aucoin, same thing to you. Were there any things that really jumped out at you in terms of surprises or things that really caught you off guard when you made the transition to being a councillor?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I was taken back by a little bit was I didn't realize how busy councillors were on different committees. You know, you have your municipal committees, you have your regional committees. And I just didn't really realize how much time a councillor puts into just those committees. Never mind your day-to-day councillor duties and what you're trying to do for your municipality. But the committees are really a big commitment, and I never really realized that before this.
Melanie Sampson, same question to you. You've described this as a long truck ride uphill, but were there any one or two parts of this truck ride that really caught you off guard or just jumped out to you as surprises in your early days?
Not necessarily, nothing really specific, I guess. I just, as we sort of went through the MGA and as we as a council kind of learned how councils act and react and operate, I guess. Like one of the big things that surprised me that I think most people wouldn't know is that, you know, a municipal council never meets without it being public, right? So I think that was the thing that surprised me the most. I see Jason shaking his head as yes as well. And I think I was just surprised, like we would never be able to have a private conversation about an issue and understand the need for transparency for sure. But that did catch me off guard because I know certainly in other levels of politics that happens all the time, those conversations as groups to kind of not necessarily make a decision, but sort of hash out some of the pieces. So that did surprise me. I'm learning to really appreciate that, to be truthful. So it surprised me in the beginning, but I'm starting to understand better what that's about and why that is. And really, other than that, you know, like Krista said, learning those bylaws and policies, there just seems to be a never-ending amount of them, which is good, right? And some that we need that we don't have. So looking forward to working on those too.
Melanie, I wanted to stick with you for just a moment because Jason brought up the point that he got some help from some veteran town councillors here in Port Hawkesbury, but it was quite a different situation for you because all 5 of the Richmond councillors were brand new, including yourself. So what was that atmosphere like for you? Did the 5 of you go in basically feeling it was a great adventure that you were all learning about this together? How was that like for you?
It kind of was, to be honest. Like the energy in the room when we were sworn in was really, really amazing and really inspiring. I think we were all coming in with fresh eyes and big ideas, and we all recognized our limited knowledge. I mean, we are led by a very knowledgeable warden. You know, Amanda has lots of years of experience of working with municipal councils, and so we really learned like a fair bit from her, to be honest, and we learned an awful lot from our staff as well, from Dawn and the rest of the managers and directors. They've been super helpful to us to get us up to speed.
Krista, I'd like to shift that question over to you as well, because the new Mulgrave Council was a mix of experience and new blood, including yourself. You're one of, if I can recall correctly, 3 new people that joined that council. Tanya Snow-Keeling had been a councillor before. Ron Chisholm, who had served on council before, wound up as the mayor. And I just wondered, did they offer you any kind of support or advice as you were settling in? Where did you get your inspiration and your support from?
Bob Russell had been previously on council for, I think, 2 terms. And then, as you had mentioned, Mayor Chisholm and Deputy Mayor Tanya Snow. So they have all been incredible. There is no question that has been too silly or too small. They've always taken the time. Of course, you're coming into something that has been developing for years and years and years, and decisions have been made long before I existed, let alone existed on council. And so quite often I'll find myself in a situation where I'm like, hang on now, like, let's slow down for a second. What is that about? And they've never, ever refused to or kicked up a stink to fill me in. They've really guided me along, myself. And I don't want to speak for Crystal, but I've seen it with her as well. We have an incredibly supportive council and incredibly supportive residents. There's been a number of times over the last year where I've run into folks who have been on council, or their husband or wives have been on council in the past, and they're very open and quick to offer up advice, or they'll say, oh yeah, I remember when that bylaw was instituted, and they'll share. So that's been really, really lovely. It's a great learning tool.
Well, I'm glad that you're bringing that up, Krista, because I wanted to ask all three of you as well, too, about how you, as councillors, have been welcomed by the community and by the people that you serve. Obviously, people got to know you very early because, like as I say, you were acclaimed to your position. But when did you get the sense that the residents of Mulgrave really looked to you and said, aha, she is the person I turn to deal with whatever problem or to see about my road getting paved or anything like this? So what has that experience been like for you?
Well, to be quite honest, Adam, I think that I'm still on that road. I don't know that everybody in town realizes today that I am a contact. Over the past year, I've had lots of people reach out, which has been just an amazing experience. But I don't know that I'm completely there yet, especially where we have veterans on the council. I dare say that, when people think about contacting their representative, they're thinking about the folks who have been there the longest first. But I really look forward to continuing to make those connections so that hopefully before the end of my 4-year term, that folks, I come to mind as well when it comes to bringing up issues. And like I said, I'm getting some of that, but I look forward to getting a whole lot more.
Jason, what's been your experience sitting on Port Hawkesbury Town Council? Have constituents been contacting you? I know you've brought a couple of issues to the table that you have gotten concerns from constituents about. What has it been like for you in terms of their recognition of you as a councillor and also just basic communication there?
So before we're even sworn in, Adam, my phone started, my inbox started. Yeah. But no, it's been good. We're fortunate enough here in Port Hawkesbury that people feel that they can reach out to any one of the 5 council members, whether it be the councillors or the mayor. And me being from Port Hawkesbury and lived here my whole life, and my family running a small business and being involved in coaching minor sports and refereeing over the years, a lot of people knew me anyway. So it was a pretty easy transition, and people were not too worried to reach out to me right away, which is why we're here. We put our name on the ballot for that reason, and we were lucky enough to be elected or acclaimed and do the best job that we can.
And Melanie Sampson, same question to you. Of course, you cover a large district in Richmond County, all the way from Lewisdale out to the western communities, Lower River inhabitants, going out to Port Malcolm and Point Tupper. So what has the experience been like for you in terms of your constituents reaching out to you and trying to serve them within your capacity as a councillor?
Right on. And don't forget the folks out in St. George's Channel, Dundee, Black River, all those folks as well, right? So it is a
I don't know anybody on
this
panel from Dundee, by the way. I don't know anybody who might have lived in the community that you
have to
live
make sure we include the Dundee people, for God's sakes.
Yes.
But yeah, like I think it's been it's been from what I can tell, it's been fairly easy in terms of like people reaching out to me, in terms of them recognizing that I'm the one. A little bit like Jason, I've lived here a fair bit of time. I'm involved in a lot of things. So I tend to have a bit of a public persona, if you will. So people, recognize, they may not necessarily have met me in person, but they've seen me or they've heard me or whatever, or we chatted during the campaign, right? So I was able to speak with a lot of especially the leaders in the different communities. And they've been very welcoming to me. The COVID is still causing some problems for physical interaction, right? So, some groups are still not able to meet physically, and then I just feel like I'm still a little bit disconnected from them. So I'm hopeful that over the next 12 months that's something that can really improve, that I can get to be more involved in the communities in a more, for lack of a better word, a physical way, so that I can connect better with them. But certainly residents, they haven't lost my phone number or my email address. And again, that's where all the learning happens, because it's only when somebody reaches out to you with a concern that you learn more about what your job is as a municipal councillor, and again, what parts we can help with and what parts we just can't help with.
All right, thank you, Melanie. Now, the next question, complete the sentence, fill in the blank. Before I had run for councillor, I wish I had known. We will start with you, Jason Aucoin. What do you wish you'd known before you ran for council?
Well, that's a good question, Adam. I guess it would be the time commitment, and not necessarily right now. It was the time commitment in the campaign. You drive through Port Hawkesbury, and you can drive through here in 12 minutes. You can hit almost every street. Well, you try walking and knocking on every door. I put a solid, I'm sure, 8-9 weeks in trying to hit every door, and of course, it's your first time. So when somebody wants you at the door for 40 minutes, well, you feel that you should stay there for 40 minutes. So yeah, I think that's something I wish I had known. I reached out to some former councillors, and they gave me some advice. And of course, I thought I knew better, which I didn't. So next time, if I decide to reoffer and I run again, I will not be spending 40 minutes at most doors. But no, that was my biggest thing, is I didn't realize how much effort and how demanding, physically demanding, it was to campaign in a small town like Port Hawkesbury.
All right, same question to you, Krista Luddington. Before I ran for council, I wish I had known. What do you wish you would know?
I wish I had known more of the history of the town of Mulgrave. Not being from here, you alluded to the fact that I'm from Dundee. I've only been in Mulgrave for the past 5 years. And where I didn't have that, door-to-door experience having been acclaimed, I feel like I sort of missed out in that part of the learning process. And so, going back to the residents, they've been incredible in reaching out with some lovely tidbits about this gem of a town. But again, I feel like it's just scratching the surface. So I just wish that I had a better grasp on what got us to where we are now, the good, the bad, the ugly, and why certain decisions were made up until this point. And I feel like that could help guide future decisions a bit more. So still digging in there, but yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing.
Okay. That's very honest and sincere of you. That's good to hear. All right. Same question to you, Melanie Sampson. Before I ran for Richmond Council, I wish I had known what?
So I'm it's something that Jason talked about a bit earlier, and the commitment in terms of, I knew about the council meetings every couple of weeks. I knew about the committees of council. I knew about the phone calls. I knew about all those pieces. But what I didn't really realize was the large quantity of committees that councillors sit on. Like in Richmond County Council, each of us sit on, I think, 10 committees by the time it's all said and done. And the frequency of those meetings, right? I see shaking heads there as well, right? It's sort of the stuff that's on the outside, and then it's the ad hoc committees that come up and, well, I really want to go to that because it's really important, right? And so I find myself, pretty much every night of the week attending a meeting of some type. And so, it's definitely a huge time commitment in terms of that. Lots of good value there, of course, but that's what I wish I had known a bit more about, was the quantity of committees and the quantity of time spent on committees.
You find out very, very quickly about how much time you put into those, for sure. Yeah, and I think all of you would agree on that. Part of what we want to do with Telile Roundtable is to encourage our participants in different areas to be able to have open communication with each other, not just me nattering off questions. And in that spirit, I've asked each of you if you have any questions for the other two councillors here. And I'd like to start with you, Councillor Jason Aucoin, because you have an issue you'd like to bring up. So go right ahead.
Thanks, Adam. So there's no secret, and today we had an announcement from the provincial government, but there's no secret in the housing shortage in our areas, in the Quad counties, the province, and really the whole country. So I'm just wondering what your experience has been so far. Like, I know we have met with numerous developers, and being new on council, you get to that meeting with this developer and they're talking about, maybe a 30-unit building, you're getting all excited. And you look over to the veterans and they're like, settled in. I'm just wondering if you ladies have run into that.
The necessity for housing, and particularly affordable housing, is of course a straight regional issue. And so for us, we had a local developer who presented to council at one of our committee the whole meetings, and talked about a development. And so, we've definitely been approached by at least one group. And we're trying our best to work with them to come up with pricing. They want some extensions on our sewer and water. And we've, with housing, it is quite challenging because it's such a large price tag and such a large responsibility. And I feel that's the overwhelming concern, is that we value it as a priority, but yet we're just not sure how to go about that, right? So our warden is the co-chair of the Straight Richmond Housing Coalition, and so she's working quite a bit with them to gather up the data that we need to support the decisions that our council needs to make. And I think for us, recognizing that housing is an issue is pretty evident if you have eyes and ears, but to have the quantitative data to back it up to sort of support funding or to move things forward at a municipal level, I think is going to be necessary for us. My biggest hope, especially after the announcement today, Jason and Krista, is that I hope we can get organized fast enough to access some of that money. Like, that is my biggest concern, is that in the world of housing and in the world of government, in particular with this government, they're really pushing everything very quickly, which I can appreciate. And I hope that we're not kind of left behind.
All right, thank you, Melanie. Krista Luddington, the same question to you. What's the Mulgrave viewpoint on affordable housing at this point?
Yeah, so certainly we recognize that it is a huge issue, and it's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. We've had preliminary discussions. Because we are such a small town and we have such a small population, which then lends itself to a small tax base, our biggest concern is on the financial front. Housing is an astronomical price tag. And so what we've been doing is really trying to dig in to see what type of funding out there, whether it be grants or loans or a combination of the two, what's available to municipalities and to towns to kind of push that ahead. So in the early days of trying to make the former school sustainable, we talked about the idea, maybe we want to flip that into some affordable housing units. And we did do some preliminary work there. And it turned out that the road that we were going down, it just wasn't the right direction at that time. And we've since repurposed the former school. So now that's self-sustainable, which opens us up to the town has a ton of land that really isn't serving much of a purpose right now. So we're now talking about, okay, what can we do in order to segment those, that land off into lots, and just start talking about how do we make this happen so that people know that we're open to having new people come to the community and making it work. But again, I think, like you both talked about, it's not a simple issue. It's very, very complex with many, many layers. And so it's kind of peeling back all of those layers and seeing what we can do from a municipal standpoint.
One thing that we've done in Port Hawkesbury is we went out and we did a housing survey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we didn't do it just for Port Hawkesbury. We sent it quite a ways, definitely across Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. And we were fortunate enough to get very good data with that through the Cape Breton Partnership. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that data will also help both Mulgrave and Richmond County, mm-hmm. because it was more of a regional than a town survey. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to help us. And I'm seeing now more and more that people are really starting to form or try to form the not-for-profit organizations, and then they will also marry that up with another company that would be for profit,
Mhm.
And I think that's, for me, I think that's what we need right now is some not-for-profits that municipalities can divest some land to, and our CAOs aren't going to jail over it, and really, jumpstart some builds to be done in the area.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I find with the housing issue, when you're out in public and people are talking to you and they're saying, well, what are we going to do in Port Hawkesbury? Or what is Richmond County doing? What is Mulgrave or Antigonish? And when you explain to them, this isn't us against them.
Mm-hmm.
This is us with them.
Mm-hmm.
And people really, it opens their eyes and they're like, yeah, you're right. We do need to work with our neighbors, which is something that we've been, between Port Hawkesbury and Richmond, we did the fire deal, and it was a very positive experience. But I think that on the housing front, that's what we need. We need to have a regional effort. And you spoke about the coalition that Amanda co-chairs on. I sit on that, and the work there is fantastic.
All right, over to you, Melanie Sampson. Do you have any questions for Jason or for Krista as we're winding this down?
Well, I just, as I sat back this weekend and kind of reflected on the past year, I just, I always ask myself the question, like, what's been the best? Like, what's been the best part? What am I the most proud of? And although we have accomplished a fair number of things as a council, I would say that for me, the best part has been how our council has been able to keep it real. So I do enjoy the relationship that we have as a council. The five of us, I feel, are very open and honest about what we think about different things. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but at the end of the day, we always leave the meeting kind of laughing and joking and walking out the door. If it's virtual or if it's in person, it's kind of the same vibe. So no matter what happens at the council table, I love that when we leave, it's like we leave that part in the room and we just move on to being, the same people. So I will say that that's probably what I'm most proud of. That was one of the things that we all kind of campaigned on, was to bring some kind of civility and respect back to the council. And I'm super proud that we've been able to do that. So I guess my question to Krista and to Jason is, as you look back on the past 12 months, what's been your favorite part? What are you the most proud of?
Yeah, so I know for us, it's been, we're kind of the same way, Melanie, where, we'll hash it out on the council floor. And then when it's done, we walk out and it's kindness. And I love that. The other great thing that has been so fulfilling over the past year, Mulgrave is a town just like any other town with its own set of challenges. And there have been many, and I'm learning more and more every day as to how deep that runs. So what's really nice is to be able to have conversations and not dwell on what was, but talk about what can be and what will be, because we're not who we were 60 years ago. But in some cases, we're so much better because we're resilient and we're strong. And the people who are here, they are the fabric that is this town. And so we're seeing, we just had a brand new business open up on the waterfront, the front porch, and it is just stunning. And so to see that, it kind of breathes new life into the town. And so now people are talking about, well, they did it, so what else can we bring in? And it's this vibe that's just super exciting. And it feels really good to have that forward type of thought process in what we can be. It's exciting.
I've been to the front porch a few times over the summer, Krista. I can guarantee you it's a terrific spot. Right on. So, Jason, same question to you from Melanie. What's been the highlight or the best part of your first year on Port Hawkesbury Town Council?
Well, I'll answer this in two parts. And the first part is on a personal level. And the best part of this year for me on a personal level is I made one commitment on my campaign, and that was that I would work hard for the residents of Port Hawkesbury. That was the only promise I made. And I can honestly say that I've fulfilled that in the first year. So that's what I feel good about personally. And as far as the council, I spoke about it a few minutes ago. I am over the moon happy that we were able to finally get a long-term fair fire deal with Richmond County. It's been something that should have been done a long time ago. And we won't assume why it hasn't been done. But just the fact that, you know, a brand new council in Richmond County come in, very willing to work with their neighbors. And we sent one of our councillors who's also a long-time volunteer firefighter, who understands that a lot more than myself or anybody else on council in Port Hawkesbury. And when we discussed who was going, I said, well, he's the only option because he's the one that gets it. He knows, he understands it. And just for me, I think that's probably the biggest accomplishment we've had in the last 12 months on council. And you know, now we're repairing damaged relations from years past. You know, just like Krista said, 60 years ago, it's not today.
Right.
And those are the two biggest things for me right now.
And Melanie, as your district actually includes Point Tupper, which was at the center of that fire deal, I imagine that hits home for you as well.
100%, like definitely the fire, you know, in terms of, you know, things that we've affected change for my district in particular. You know, the fire deal is a huge one. We've made some bylaw and policy changes to our sewer system that's made it more reasonable for the folks in the Evanston system. So like there's a few things that we've done. Certainly if I was to go through, I was impressed when I even thought about my list this weekend. So but definitely, fire services deal, top of the list. Yeah.
Last question of our roundtable goes to you, Krista. What do you have to ask for Jason and Melanie about their experiences?
Yeah, so something that's been at the forefront of our town council has been accessibility. Of course, we know that in the not so distant future, in 2030, we have some responsibilities in terms of public buildings being accessible, and there's funds out there. But, you know, I imagine in both Richmond County and Port Hawkesbury, it's a feat to tackle. I know for us, we own multiple buildings as the town, and so we're responsible to have reasonable access to all of those town-owned buildings. And so we formed a committee, and we've been kind of plugging away at it, but it is massive. So I'm wondering, is accessibility at the forefront of your council sessions? Do you guys have committees put in place? How are you tackling it so that you can in 2030 say, yes, we're compliant?
Melanie, we'd like to start with you on this one.
Sure, we're just like, it's certainly something that we've talked about at the council table, but we're just sort of as a council in the beginning stages of some of that work. We've done some of that work at the Richmond Arena. So we had some funding to do some accessibility pieces there. And we're getting ready to do an accessibility study for that building as well, because that's going to be probably our biggest hurdle in terms of making that building accessible, just based on the way it's laid out. But I'm going to be honest, I can't recall if we formed a committee or if we talked about the need to form a committee, but we will be doing it in a committee basis as well. But yeah, definitely we recognize the timelines are tight on that, and very, very important to make sure that we have, you know, fully accessible locations for the residents of Richmond County. Yeah.
All right, over to you, Jason Aucoin, Port Hawkesbury's approach to accessibility.
Well, Krista, we're very fortunate in this fact that one of our town staff sits on the Nova Scotia board for accessibility. Mm-hmm. So we have a committee up and running, and we've got one staff and two of our council members on that committee. It's a number of residents as well, and they're working pretty hard. And it's funny because I was on the phone with our mayor just last night, and I asked what she was doing, and she was trying to get a study done, and it's the first step of a plan by February. So she's working pretty hard on that right now with her committee. And we do have a committee, but we're very fortunate in the fact that we've got some members in Port Hawkesbury who are very, very educated. Like, you know, we have one gentleman who has a son in a wheelchair, and he's really helping along, you know, and he's involved throughout the whole province. So he's really helping us get going down the right road and making sure that, you know, in different spots we're looking at accessible parking, for instance. Well, what I thought was accessible parking is absolutely not accessible parking. And he's very clearly shown us that.
Mhm.
But it's good to have those residents on board. So yes, the short answer is yes, we have a committee
Mhm.
and they're working very hard. And I think that there was some talks of possibly even trying to get a regional committee going.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because I think that we're going to need to keep on the radar, accessibility. I think we often think about in terms of physical accessibility, but there's so many other parts, right? Like
Absolutely.
having signs that are braille, like having there's a lot of different, there's so many more parts to accessibility that I had never really considered, to be honest. And now it's been brought to the forefront, right? And I'm thinking, wow, that's true. We need to make sure we have all of those pieces because we should, right? So I'm interested to see how it's going to progress, but I like the idea of a regional approach on a lot of things, Jason, and this would definitely be one of them. This sort of like if we had a bit of a standard that we said, hey, we're all going to kind of try to be at this level, then I think in the Strait area, residents could come to expect that, if they're at a town or a municipally owned property, it's going to, provide certain accessibility pieces for sure.
Yeah, so if you next time you're in Port Hawkesbury, you get a chance, take a drive down Philpott Street. Our Public Works are redoing some sidewalks.
Yeah.
And you'll see on the entrance and exit of every sidewalk, they've got some plates there for accessibility.
Love it.
Nice.
It's this kind of straight area approach that we are hoping to encourage with our roundtable series. And with that in mind, we want to thank each and every one of you for sharing all your views on your first year in office, and also reminding us all that even though it's 3 different municipalities on a conversation like this, there's a whole lot of common threads that can help in future developments, not just for each of your own councils and your own municipalities, but for the region in general. So in that spirit, I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you, Melanie Sampson, for joining us here this evening. Municipal Councillor for District 3 in Richmond County. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam.
And I want to thank Krista Luddington, just wrapping up her first year as a town councillor for Mulgrave. Thank you, Krista.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And the last congratulations goes to Jason Aucoin, because he, as a result of getting the second highest vote total in Port Hawkesbury's municipal elections last year, is about to be sworn in as Port Hawkesbury's new deputy mayor in November. So thank you and early congratulations on your new post, Jason.
Thank you, Adam.
And that wraps up our very first edition of the new Roundtable series here on Telile Community Television. Once again, I'd like to thank my guests, Councillors Krista Luddington, Melanie Sampson, and Jason Aucoin. If you have any ideas for the types of people that you'd like to see on future editions of Roundtable, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email. The address is adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. Don't forget you can contact Telile Community Television directly with your commentary and your ideas. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is info@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we have every single episode of all our series airing on the Telile Community Television YouTube channel, including every episode of Roundtable. So be sure to check that out, and you'll see much more in terms of what my Telile colleagues and I have been producing lately as well. For now, I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you for joining me for the debut edition of Roundtable. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now.